Round of applause to all our speakers, evaluators, and roll call for this evening. And without further ado, let's begin our meeting. And I'd like to actually introduce our first, should I say, speaker. And this is what I have. Have you reached level 4 or 5 in your path? Look at the moderate panel project and skip right over it. The unfamiliar can be overwhelming. Isn't that right? The aim of tonight's event is to familiarize you with the why, the who, and the how, so that the next time you consider this elective, you may embrace it. Tonight's moderator is moderating a panel for the first time. She is learning right along with you. She is, however, an accomplished speaker, evaluator, and facilitator. The skills we learn as Toastmasters have a wide application to situations both inside and beyond Toastmasters. Here to inspire you, to stretch your skills, leading to tonight's panel entitled Moderating a Panel, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Please welcome distinguished Toastmaster, Lindy McLean. A round of applause for Lindy.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Madam Toastmaster. One would never know it was your first time at the helm here. You're doing beautifully. So let me see a show of hands. How many of you have moderated a panel already? Well, I would expect my panelists, yes, and a few other ones, great. How many have never done it before? Also some of those, good. Well, I'm on that team tonight. Whether it's moderating a panel or something else, I know that each of you knows that feeling of thinking, maybe next time. There's always something to do that allows me to use my strengths. And I believe level 4 and 5, I've often spent organizing events and making things happen of that sort. So it's easy to do that. And I have never moderated a panel. When our committee, special events committee, got together and started brainstorming, and this idea came up, I thought, that's for me, because I don't know how, and there's nothing better than embracing a thing to learn how to do it. So here I am, out at the edge of my comfort zone, doing something new. And that is what I want to empower each and every one of you to do. As I begin, I'm going to introduce each of our panelists, and I'm going to ask them to share something that they are doing outside of their comfort zone in their life, whether it's professional, personal, Toastmasters, whatever. I'm going to begin with Solarsar. Solarsar de la Porta. Here he is. Did I say that right, Solarsar?
That's correct.
Okay. Solarsar completed facilitation training as part of his certification as a master trainer in 2002. Since that time, he has facilitated meetings with the Veterans Administration and the Department of Defense. Those are big guys, among others. Within Toastmasters, he has facilitated panel discussions about evaluation, Toastmaster contest, club officer training, as well as a series of leadership discussions guested by past international presidents and past district leaders. Now, I have to say, when I thought of this project, during my year of fame as a third place winner in 2020, I got invited to a number of things, including panels. And Solarsar was head and shoulders my favorite moderator. So I thought of him right away and was pleased that he said yes. So Solarsar, what are you doing in your life that requires you right now to step outside of your comfort zone?
Well, actually, as you know, Lindy, and Abhijit knows, I'm also a magician and performer. And I haven't been performing for several years, so I'm very cloistered and closeted. And this year I'm working with a mentor specifically to get out and do more performing than what I've done in the past. So it's still a little nerve-wracking to get out there. There's butterflies all over the place.
I would have never guessed that, and I'm so excited. I mean, I know about that, about the magic, but I never would have guessed the butterflies. So congratulations. You can pop off a magic trick anytime here. We'd love to have it. Next, let's have Abhijit Joshi, who I met. Let's see, how did we meet, Abhijit? Well, I was presenting somewhere and I met you, and your face was so alive and you were so engaged and you have such warmth about you. I knew right away that I wanted to connect. And we've had the fortune of sharing a couple of clubs. I've watched him in his leadership. One of my favorite people. Abhijit Joshi has been on the leadership fast track since he joined Toastmasters. Current director of District 101, he has learned the secrets of bringing out the best in people, using multiple leadership styles as needed. He has moderated numerous panels and promises to share moments both golden and very ugly. Abhijit, tell me, what are you doing that's requiring you to stretch these days?
This weekend, I'm organizing an AI summit. It's something different, it's more technical, not just Toastmasters. I'm trying to get the community together. It has been a learning experience. We might have 150 people in person. So that has been the most stretchest thing I've ever done in my life.
Congratulations. Look to you for organizing future Toastmasters International conferences, no doubt. Next, let's have Rebecca Murray. Rebecca, how did we meet, Rebecca? I think I presented at one of your clubs and we immediately recognized each other. Oh, that's my sister from another mother. Equally silly and equally hams, maybe we could call us.
Out of the box.
With over 20 years of experience in the communications industry, Rebecca P. Murray has left her mark in various public and private sectors. Her versatile, I won't make a joke. I wanted to, but I won't. Her versatile
Go ahead.
includes facilitation expertise from presenting as a main stage MC to leading conference breakout rooms, college classrooms, youth activities, and once upon a time, even dog parks, which is how I was going to say about marking your territory. So my dear Rebecca, tell me, what are you doing that's requiring you to reach outside of your comfort zone?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say pickleball, which I started last year, and then I was going to say tap dancing, which I also started last year. But you know how it is, something scary at first, but you keep at it, like Toastmasters, and all of a sudden it becomes a lot less scary as you improve your skills. So I can't really say those are stretching me right now the way that they did in the beginning. But the one thing that continues to stretch me is that in the business of speaking, one must stretch oneself every day when in networking and reaching out and trying to find more business. And there's the only way the only way for me to do what I love to do is to do that one thing that I don't necessarily love to do, but is essential to do, which is to connect with people and ask, and ask them to hire me. So that's the continual stretch every day of the week, just about.
Congratulations. And I remember having a conversation with you about, I think it was about messages and what you need to hear and so forth. And I just think it's wonderful that you recognize that you are worth it. You are worth asking that question over and over again so that you can do what makes you thrive. That's wonderful. Yes. May we all learn that. Finally, let's have Yolanda Ali Page. Yolanda has been asked to be a panelist all over the world multiple times over the last 25 years. You might win the prize for longest lasting panel person here today, I'm not sure. She's also delivered sessions on how to be an engaging panelist. The biggest stage as a panelist came in 2017 as one of the top 10 speakers in the World Championship of Public Speaking. Yolanda and I met at a meeting that was sort of a showcase, and we were among a list of, I think, semifinalists who were doing speeches, and her speech stood out to me as both engaging and entertaining and meaningful, all the good things that you want to see in a speech. Yolanda, so she's been a go-to and a repeated person that I've asked to come back and teach and perform and so forth. Yolanda, tell me, what are you doing that is outside of your comfort zone right now?
Believe it or not, I'm an introverted extrovert. So all this talk of me being a semifinalist and the world champion of public speaking, then a finalist there, I'm really an introverted extrovert. When I met my husband 2 years ago, we met in a poetry scene, and all of my poetry had been done online with no people watching me. It was just online. But ever since we got married, he was like, "You're not a real performing poet until you hit stages." So, one of the most uncomfortable things I did in that atmosphere was to memorize my poems and to go on these stages to actually do them. And we've hit over 100 stages in 2 years. And believe it or not, still going on those stages. I'm still a little shaky with the unknown and whatnot, but it's stretched me beyond just being a speaker. Now I'm a poet. In fact, I'm double hatting, which is why I might go on camera and come back because I'm on the stage right now with a ton of poets uh, performing, believe it or not, in like 2 minutes. But but I was not going to say no to Lindy because she's Lindy. I couldn't say no. So if I go off camera, it is not because I am not listening. It is because I don't want you guys to watch my mouth move while you get to watch me. I don't know if you're like, do it, Yolanda. But yeah, if I go off and come back on, it'll be because I'm performing real quickly and then I'm coming back here, but I'm listening to everything.
That's
I'm honored to be on stage with these wonderful people.
Thank you. And I love it that you both you and Solarsar are stretching your artistic selves to be just a little bit more artistic than you already are. You know, though, Yolanda, I don't know if you can get your answer in fast, but I particularly wanted you to start with this question. If you can't answer it, I'll ask you later. The question is, why do a panel? Why even bother? What is in it? What's why? Tell us.
My why will always be it's the things that you get to do as a panelist. Number one, think about what we're doing here. You get to interact and listen to other fellow panelists. Look at this. You get to be on the stage with multiple people, and it's not a competition. You just get to relax and answer questions. You also get to learn from the other panelists. They're up here because they've done it as well. So you may get to hear something that you haven't heard before. The biggest one is you get to be in front of an audience as a collective. So you get to relax. And with all the unique points of view that end up being given to a audience, you can do that with a panel. So it's not just one voice in the room, it's multiple voices in the room. And if you look at the stage right now, you see a collective here. You see a diverse group of individuals. I'm a D&I person, DE&I now. I'm a DE&I person. I love diversity. I absolutely love diversity.
Tell
So
us what that stands for those of us who are uninitiated.
DE&I is it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Very, very important, making sure that everybody within the room feels like there's a level of inclusion in the room. So between the four of us, I'm positive that we're going to be able to speak something that someone would like to hear, something that someone can learn. So yeah, it's being able to hear the multiple voices, the diversity of feedback and input that's given, and the fact that we can all do it there in front of a group of people all at once. They get, a show with the four of us as stars. Where else can you do that right now? Can you go out and get four of us on stage providing our input? Yeah.
Thank you, Yolanda. Thank you. And I know you're going to be called on stage yourself soon. So
I'm going to stay here as long as I can before I disappear and come back.
All right. Anybody have anything to add to that before I move on? Abhijit, Rebecca, Solarsar, is that pretty in Solarsar?
It's not an ad, but I want to stress something Yolanda said because that was very thorough, is that it's something someone would like to hear. So each of us have a different voice, and each of us may say something similar, but it's going to resonate with different people. And that's the great part of the panel. So Yolanda, thank you for the thoroughness and good luck with your poem.
Thank you, Solarsar. Abhijit.
One thing I want to continue with what Yolanda said. When we have three diverse points, sometimes we don't resonate with all of them. There is that one person which resonates with us the most. And it's very easy to apply that and learn from that. So that is the biggest benefit of having a panel discussion.
Wonderful. All really good points. Thank you all. Rebecca, let's start, everyone. We're going to start now with best practices and how you prepare for a panel, whether it's as a panelist or a moderator. And Rebecca, I say that because I want to ask you first about event preparation, because we know that as Toastmasters, if you're going to moderate a panel, that very often means you're in charge of that meeting and you have to organize things and ask people to do this and that. And you need to do it in advance. How far in advance? What's your recommendation about that?
Well, it would be, I liken it, if you're the panel moderator, you're an MC. And as an MC, I mean, that is a high level speaking opportunity. It is also a leadership opportunity. And so I find it important to connect with each person on the panel in advance, make sure, as I would in any MC job, to craft an introduction that elevates them and connects them with the audience, so the audience gets to know them before they even open their mouth and say a single word, so that the audience is leaning in, and I've honored them in that way. And then also the equity, going back to that word, to ensure that each voice on the floor, it has ample stage time to shine. And it's my job to make sure that not, there isn't one voice that is the dominating voice, that I'm assertive enough and professional enough to help move the conversation along for the audience's sake. So I think, it's all the same whether you're moderating a panel, hosting a meeting facility as the Toastmaster, or you're on a big stage, a main stage at a conference and the MC there. The skills are really exactly the same. And your job is to not take center stage. I mean, it is briefly, but not to overshine your speakers. It's to step back and to elevate them.
Thank you for all that. And I didn't hear a number. So how many weeks in advance would you
Oh, weeks.
prepare? Or
I just emceed a big conference, and I started preparing months in advance. So I don't think there's, trying to get a hold of the speakers late last year as soon as I found out who they were. And the conference was just a couple of weeks ago. So, for me in this particular case, it was 3 months in advance.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And thank you for that inclusive answer. Now the next question is this, and Solar Star, I'm going to ask this. How do you go yeah, I'll wait to ask if you have anything to add to the whole package till a little bit. So Solar Star, how do you go about choosing your panelists? What do you look for? And are there flags that should raise a concern? Tell us about that process for you.
Well, actually, I have to say that I never choose my panelists. I'm usually chosen for a group of panelists. And so my job is then to find out, similar to what you did in the preparation and what Rebecca was talking about as well, my job is to find out about them and to do what Rebecca said. I want to bring out the best of them. I'm not the star. I want to hear their voice. I want to ensure that if they have points that they want to make, that I make sure we get to that so they can highlight that particular emphasis. And I will say that if I were choosing panelists, let's say specifically for a Toastmaster thing, as opposed to a professional thing, if I were choosing a panelist, I would look for people that I felt had experience on the topic, not just opinions, because the group of people here don't want to just hear opinions. They want to hear somebody who's done something, and this is how they feel they can best apply it. So those are my points in response to your question, Lindy, and I hope that that was clear.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Which reminds me that Yolanda has a story about what not to do that I'll ask her about later in regards to that. Abhijit, do you have anything to add to that about choosing panelists and what you look for and anything that makes you think maybe not this time?
Choosing the panelists, I start talking to them, and when I talk to them, I realize if they're not ready to open up with me, then I know they're not going to open up during the panel discussion. So that's a big red flag for me. And a couple of things I wanted to add more. I don't know if it should come later, but one thing is I always think about where I want to take this panel discussion to. What is my goal? Like if I'm not clear in my head where I want to take that direction, then it becomes very tough for the panelists who are coming with me to go there. So I need to be very clear where I'm going to go with it. And second thing also, I'm also thinking about what would the audience like to hear from this panelist that can create value for them so that I can craft my questions in that way. And Solarzar is a master in doing that.
Thank you, Abhijit. Thank you very much. How many, I know you have a specific idea about this, Abhijit. So how many panelists do you recommend having?
See, it depends upon the time duration. Suppose if I have 1 hour, then 3 panelists is good because then I can get 15 minutes. It takes time for people to open up. Sometimes they will not open up immediately, but after 2, 3 questions, then they start opening up. For example, I was doing actually, Solarzar was supposed to do that panel, Real World Leadership, last year on March 8th on the Women's International Day. I'll come back to the ugly part of that. But in that panel, I had this VP. She didn't open up in the starting, but after third or fourth question, she started sharing that she also has the imposter syndrome. And that was a big shocker for the audience too. So once they share their vulnerabilities, it makes a big difference for the audience. They connect more to the panel. And as a moderator, my job is to bring that out, those points that will cause that connection to happen.
May I ask, was that point of vulnerability something that came up in your pre-conversation? I know you've told me that you also make a point of calling people and interviewing them in advance.
No, it didn't come up during the talk before. Yeah, go ahead, Solarzar.
Yeah. I probably need to add to that. I was supposed to be the facilitator. So I had interviewed all of the panelists. I had spoken with them, I had reached out, I connected. And then at the last minute, there was a change of the technology to access, and I couldn't get in. But because Abhijit had been on all the emails related to it, he had all the questions, he had all the background, he had all the information, and he ran with it. So he had not had the opportunity to talk to them in advance.
Okay, so I didn't know this was the same story when I asked that. Sorry about that. Excellent. Solarzar, about interacting and communicating with panelists in advance, what kind of recommendations do you have?
Well, twofold. I'd like to say one thing back to Abhijit. I've always felt that I was Abhijit, but maybe I'm just an imposter. But
He has hair, Solarzar.
I know. But, so to answer your question, I think a lot of that is based on, I prefer to talk to the panelists if possible, first and foremost. If that's not possible, I follow up with email, not text, but email. And I try to create that. But email is not a very good conversational tool, which is why hearing the voice, creating the connection, establishing a rapport with that panelist so they feel safe when you're addressing them in the context of the panel. So I always prefer to speak with them.
Tell me about how you handle questions and in advance of it.
Me?
Yes.
Well, first, talking about topic areas as well. First, I do research the topic area because I don't consider myself an expert, and this is their topic. And I ask them, and I also, speaking with the panelists, I'll ask them about particular areas of that. Is this something you'd want to explore? Is this related to this? Is this that? And once I gather the information from all the panelists, I'll put together a series of questions similar to what you did and go back out and say, here are the questions I'm going to ask. Now, please, you may not be asked this directly. You may want to add to it, whatever else. But I stress to them when I speak with them and also when I email later on, so they have the documentation, is that I intend it to be a conversation. So that what we're having is a conversation. I don't care who else is in the room, we are having a conversation. And I want you to just be relaxed to share whatever you choose. And that's how I always approach it. And the questions are designed to keep, as Abhijit said, a little bit of a flow of where you would like to see it to get to based on what is the panelist interested in making sure they want to share, and what do I believe the audience may want to know. And I try to bring those two things together as best as I can.
Excellent. Abhijit, you have something?
I want to add what Solorzar is saying. One more thing I realize I do is I listen to the panelists, what they are saying. Because sometimes they open up something new which I never thought about it. But that's a very beautiful nugget. I want to push on it immediately and run with it. Because that can be very exciting for the panel discussion.
You're talking about during or before?
During the panel discussion.
Okay. Great, thanks. Anything else that about communicating with the panelists beforehand?
Rebecca, how did you do this last one you did? You started 3 months ago.
Oh, that was an MC job, so it wasn't really a panel.
But still, I bet you have some pointers about people and bringing out the best of them.
Yes, well, and sometimes, as there was during this conference, there were a couple of changes that happened at the very, very last minute. And one of those was, oh, we have somebody from National that came, so you're going to also introduce them at lunch. And of course, I've never met them before. So at the cocktail hour, I found them, talked to them for quite a while, went back to my room, used my Toastmasters knowledge of all the hundreds of introductions that I've crafted in my life. And I put together this lovely introduction that was such a surprise for him, to be honored in that way. He said, it really touched him, this rising star. So to be flexible, I guess, was the message there, to be flexible when things change, be adaptable, and be brilliant.
That's gorgeous. Yeah, be brilliant. No small request there. Abhijit.
One thing I do is I research the panelists before even talking to them. I need to know what they are good at or what is their background. Because as soon as I'm talking to them on the phone, I can vibe with what they are saying. I need to have a good understanding of it. Because my goal is to create that rapport really fast so that we can go deeper into things. So that's one thing I've learned that it helps.
So this is with someone that you've never met. You were able to do some personal research so that you can easily build rapport and then do the same thing and during the panel.
Yes. For example, I was doing this panel at work. How we can be green at the time we are working from home. So I called each one of them and tried to understand why are they so passionate about it. So understanding their story was very important. And also I did some research before, okay, what they are specifically doing and why. Sometimes I didn't know the why, so I will ask them. I'll dig deeper into that. Because that why was very important for me to understand when I'm doing the panel, because then I come to know where they are coming from.
Excellent. Thank you. Yolanda, you're just in time for this question that I have for you, which is, as a panelist, what is your preparation for being a panelist? Anything particular?
Yes, actually it is, and I got to practice here. But I was just in a panel as well over the weekend. And there are a couple of things that I do. Number one, I need to know what y'all are going to ask. Our moderator did an excellent job of making sure we knew what was going to be talked about. I also need to know where we're going to be. Is it going to be a large room? Is it going to be a small room? How many panelists are on the stage so that I'll kind of know how to separate, the time that I'm going to take so that I can make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak. I also want to know how big the audience is. What's going to be the way that the questions are done? Are they going to be done as we go? Are they going to be done at the end? Do I need to capture some of the things that may be asked of me? The better prepared you are, the better equipped you can be to make sure that the audience is informed. And I also say entertained. I always like to throw in something that creates kind of lighthearted moments as well. So if it happens to be a heavy type of topic, and believe it or not, we get those, or highly technical types of topics, I always include something that will break up the monotony. So the one that I just did, I have a computer science degree, a master's, and it was a technical topic. And I didn't want it to get stale with just technical stuff. So I threw in some jokes about technology, or I had some funny stories about technology, something to make sure you break up just the monotony of hearing people talk. And finally, I make sure that I am fully invested and available for the panel. I will put my phone on do not disturb, so I will not get messages on my phone or on my watch. I make sure that I'm fully invested to being part of the don't think about this time. Beside this time, I make sure that I am fully invested so that I could spend my time focused on what the other panelists are saying, as well as what the audience might be asking. This time excluded, obviously. But yeah, that's what I do. That's what I do.
So you receive the thunderous applause when you're on or off camera. This is what I want to
And
know.
then they did. They were like, talk to us. And I was like telling my husband, tell them I can't talk to them right now. I'm back on camera. So yeah. But yeah, those are the things that I do to prepare. And as you can see, you did a great job. We were able to pretty much, because you don't want to be stuck trying to think of what you're going to say in the moment. And I've seen a lot of panels do that, and it takes much longer to get through all the panelists when you try to think of something off the cuff to say. Have all your thoughts written out so that you'll know exactly what it is you want to say. Share the stage.
And I particularly appreciated thinking about the in-room logistics, that I hadn't thought of that, probably because it's been so long since I've been in a room. But you didn't mention the microphones. You mentioned that before. Will you talk about that?
Correct. Make sure that you know whether or not it's going to be a little lavalier or whether or not you're going to be holding the mic and then passing it to people. It could get a little, I've been on panels where we've only had one mic and we've had to, yes, and that's all. And you'll have to pass the mic 3 people down. It would be great if they already have 2 set up. That way it could be the person responding and the person that is ready to respond. Thank you very much for.
And I think you said that you're comfortable at this point, since you've done it for quite a number of years, that you're comfortable actually making that suggestion. Is that correct?
And I do actually. For this, it was a Zoom call, so I knew we would be all on it. But the one that I did this weekend was in person, and they planned for it a month ago. And I did ask, and believe it or not, they were only planning on having lavalier mics on everybody, and they were like, "But that should help it." And I was like, "Well, no, because if a person is speaking, the other person's mic may be live, and it may cause background noise. Test it out." And they did, and it was a lifesaver because when we tested out 2 mics open at the same time, background noise, lot of background noise and so forth. So echoes and so forth. So yeah, the venue also needs to be just as prepared, like a Zoom or an in-person, so that we can comfortably moderate. They had tall chairs at another one, Lindy. I'm 5'0". I object, Your Honor. I cannot climb into a tall chair. All the chairs were extremely tall. So we had to climb literally climb onto these chairs. So I'm like, I cannot touch the ground. Thank God there were no fire drills or we had no evacuations because I wouldn't have been able to get down readily. But that was something that I didn't even think about asking. What are we sitting in? Make sure we can sit down. so that we can relax. But the chairs were so tall that it made me feel uncomfortable. Get a phone book. Thank you, Kyle. I feel much better about my height now.
This is what I love about Zoom. We're all the same height. Yolanda
I
and
love it.
Rebecca and I are all the same height, so this is good. There was a pop-up question from the audience, so let's just back up for a minute. So let's assume that you are going to do a moderation project in Toastmasters. How do you decide what your subject is going to be? Anyone? Abhijit, this one is a pop-up questions.
I want to go back to 28th October 2020. I was area director for this club, Toast It Now, which is the eBay Toastmasters club. And our membership was like 10 members. And I wanted to get that club president's distinguished. We're thinking about what should we do? And we decided, okay, we are going to do an open house. But during that discussion, we came up with a topic to do impact of Toastmasters as our panel discussion for 20 minutes. Because we'll have 20, means like a lot of new members there who have never been to Toastmasters. And we planned in such a way that we had 3 panelists who had a diverse experience in Toastmasters. And we were able to get those viewpoints from them. And that helped us to get 10 members from that open house. So it depends upon what exactly you want to do. Try to create value for the members, and that will make your panel discussion very successful.
So you're talking about a multi-level awareness, because not only did you provide value for the listeners, but you provided value for the club. And so it was thinking like that globally, global thinking that allowed that. Anybody else have something to say about picking a topic? Solar Sar.
Actually, I want to build off what Abhijit said, is that, and go back to something Rebecca said as well, is that if you're picking a topic for a panel discussion and you're going to be the facilitator, remember, it's not about you. It's about the panelists you choose and what they bring to that topic. So if you want to take a topic, just as Abhijit said, about impact of Toastmasters, it's not about your impact per se. It's about what each of your panelists are going to bring, or evaluation. It's what each of your panelists are going to bring. So when I've used a panel, I've always used a panel in the sense of trying to bring different viewpoints, as Yolanda said, the diversity of viewpoints from different people who have experience and can bring that experience to others, because I think that's a value versus just my opinion. So I just wanted to share that.
I can add one more thing to that. When Solorzar did the panel Road to World Championship for Public Speaking, he had 3 different people, and then he was getting 3 different viewpoints. Okay, how did you get to that stage, that final stage of the World Championship? And that was helpful for all the audience there.
Rebecca. You're muted.
There we go. Like trying to unmute my picture. That doesn't work. Yeah, I'm just observing here how everyone on this stage right now, it's a mindset. So for example, Solazar, when you speak, you're tapping back to something Abhijit said, something I said, something Yolanda said, something Lindy mentioned. Abhijit, you're doing the same thing, Yolanda too. It's a mindset of inclusion and voices in the room, equity around the table, and that mindset will help us whether we're in our community, whether we're at a Toastmasters meeting, or whether we're facilitating a panel. It's all the same, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's lovely to be a part of.
That's grand.
I say one
Yolanda.
thing. Abhijit said something. When you are moderating, you are not part of the panel. There was a panel during our International Women's Day where the moderator did that very thing and made it run very long. Every single question she asked the panel after they were done, she would give an answer. And I think that If somebody had told her that very thing, ma'am, you are a moderator, you are not part of the panel, I think it would have went a little bit smoother. But yeah, please remember that. It's not that they don't want to hear you, but you're right. So I think Salah's, like you said, they're not here for you. They're here for the panel. You can offer very brief comments, say, I agree, and then move on. Lindy is doing an excellent job of, giving her view in very small succession and then moving on. So she's doing a great job. So yeah, please remember that. Please remember that.
I paid Yolanda to say that, so it's okay. Now, guys, I talked to you about the good, the bad, and the ugly, which was my title. And I actually was going to have John Tyson share that little sound clip. And then I think I talked before he got a chance to do it. But I said, let's go good, bad, ugly. But I'm going to throw that on its head. Let's go straight for the ugly, because let's start really with what things have you either seen or been a part of that have been a train wreck, either because of something someone had control of or did not. Let's start with Abhijit. I know that you have a good one.
It was last year in March. Solarzar was supposed to do the panel. He was the panel moderator. I was like, oh, he's going to take care of everything. I don't have to worry about anything. I was in Denver airport. I had a 4-hour layover. So initially, when I wanted to do the panel discussion, I just wanted to do it on Zoom. But then my company said that, oh, we would like to get people from my company involved, and it should not be on Zoom. It needs to be on Teams. And I'm afraid of Zoom bombing, so I decided to put a registration link on Teams. The invite had gone to people in Toastmasters, to 2,500 people in Toastmasters, and it worked to nearly 10,000 plus people. As we approached, our panel was supposed to start at 6 o'clock. 5:30, Solarzar is calling me and saying, hey, I'm not able to get on the Teams room. At that moment, I was a little bit panicking. I tried to call the technical help, but he could not get on it. And at that moment, as the audience was increasing in numbers, like 5 minutes before 6, there were nearly 80 people in the room. And then Solar said, you have to take it. So one thing I've learned is you have to be ready and step up any moments of time. Always have a backup as a moderator. I learned that again later on, last August. My PQD got sick. And at the last moment, I took over the panel. Thank God Solarzar was there to prep me up. But it happens many times, so always have a backup moderator.
And Solarzar, I think you'd been trying for a while to get on that, isn't that right? Teams. Teams is another platform, right? Teams is another video.
Actually, I came in, unlike tonight, I came in a half hour early. I was trying to get on. Abhijit had his technical help call me, went through the whole thing, and it turned out because it was his company's team, you had to be an employee to get in. And so I couldn't get hired in time to do the discussion. But as I
Department of Defense allows. Go ahead.
but as I said, because of Abhijit was always a part of the interaction that I was having with the panelists, he was able to take it over from the airport and run it. And I'd like to build on that a little bit. And then later on, we had another panel discussion. It was a Toastmaster one about evaluation. And at the moment before the evaluation, about an hour before, I found out that my power was going out. So I actually had to call one of the panelists and ask them to be the facilitator because I couldn't be there. So there's another person in the district that kept saying, well, if you hire Solazar to be the facilitator, he won't show up.
How about you, Rebecca? Train wrecks or faux pas? Anything that's a bad bump?
Yeah, I want to feel if I'm the one being invited to speak, I call it the queen for a day feeling. And that's how I would want my guests to feel, your queen or king for a day versus chopped liver. And one of one of the ways we do that, again, I keep going back to this equity thing because I think it is just, it's paramount. It's paramount. If you're allowing one person to, or two people out of three, to have more stage time, and here's me, I'm sitting there like, wow, am I ever gonna have a word, get a word in edgewise? I have something to say here, but I don't want to be fighting for time. I want it to be given to me. I want it to be, that's my gift for being here is to use my voice. But I have seen that work very badly. I was, and again, it's in a panel or it's in a room when we're greeting people. I was in a group of people. There were 11 of us there, and the moderator said, okay, here's what I want from you. I want your name, where you work, and basically why we're here. This is what we do at Toastmasters, and we ask our guests, right? Why did you say yes? And he has a one-on-one discussion with one person. I'm watching the clock for 25 minutes. For 25 minutes. And then the next person for 15. We are 40 minutes in, and he's heard from two people. And I thought, this is not the place for me to be. I will never come back, right? I'm never going to be a part of this again. So it's the queen or king for a day feeling when we have done that for our guests and they walk off the stage feeling elated and celebrated, they're going to say yes to anything we ask them to do in the future, just like we all say yes to Lindy McLean.
I think you had something you said, connect, let's see, connect before content,
Oh,
right?
connection before content. Yes, yes, connection before content. And so that would be at the start of a Toastmasters meeting, how we connect with each other before we, get into the meat and potatoes. And, warming up the audience is the connection before the panelists start speaking. So as a moderator, that's part of your job, is that warm up part, get everybody nice and warmed up, that connection before you dive in.
Abhijit, did you want to say something?
Yes. One technique Solar has taught me, sometimes panel is different. Sometimes someone can take more time, but as a moderator, it's my duty to make sure each and every person gets the voice. So what I learned from Solar is you can immediately say, hey, Yolanda, that's a good point. Let me come back to you. Rebecca, what do you think about it? You want to keep on changing it, because if someone takes the time, then it's not fun. The other people lose that energy. And also, it's also part of the prep. Like if I'm prepping, like I have a panel discussion this Saturday, the one thing I'm going to tell them is, I want you to speak for 1 minute, 45 seconds and tell me in front like a story or an anecdote. Just don't answer the question to me. That's one thing I'm going to prep them for.
Okay. So these are kind of advanced techniques. It sounds like as a beginner, it's hard to feel that brave to interrupt. So thank you for the pointer. Yolanda, what's the worst train wreck that you've seen or been a part of?
I almost hate to say it. So Rebecca described something that I've seen before. The panel is too big. If the panel is too big, not everybody is going to have that opportunity. And one person who loves to talk, come on, we're talking about panelists, and if they love to talk, they're gonna want to talk. And I think that's where the moderator, I'm glad Abhijit said, hey, listen, what I'm gonna do is, I've learned from Salazar, I'm gonna tell them exactly how much time to take. And I think that it is important not to have your panel be too big. And at this particular one, it was very similar. They droned on and on. You began to hear it like the teacher on Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah. It began to just, it made your your head hurt. Um, and you weren't learning anything because you were zoned out, you were tuned out. And it was a panel of 8, I believe, 8 or 9. It's a big panel, and they had an hour. And I guess they thought an hour would be long enough, but some of the people did not get the equal airtime. So it was long. Some of the ones were talking and interrupting others just to get their point across. And then it was just so, it was so boring. I hate to use that word because I love my coworkers, but it was so boring. It was boring to the point where somebody raised their hand when they said to ask a question and they said, "Can we stop the panel? Can we stop it?" And everybody was like, "Okay." What do you say? So it was just not the best. Yes, that's exactly right. It was like, why did I come to work today? I could have stayed home. I could have phoned this in. And if they say you could have phoned this in, you could have put this on a PowerPoint and just let us read it. You could have put it in a book and just let us read it. You could have put it anywhere and just let us read it. It's like VCR instructions. Those are the worst panels, the worst, and they will not want to come back. Rebecca said it. Did you hear her? She was like, "I'm out. I'm never coming again. Don't ask me. Don't do that. Don't do that."
Perfect. Perfect. And I think you told me about a last minute addition to a panel that was
Yes,
equally terrible.
it was.
I
Should I?
got my red card. So I cannot believe, of course, I should have known when I talked with each of you for at least a half hour on the phone that time was going to go far faster than I knew. Let me do two things. First, as I'm speaking, we're going to be moving to some Q&A, but I'm also going to ask each of you, these are wonderful panelists, and each of them has their own area of expertise. If you were willing to put your email and how best to contact you in your chat. So if people have questions that don't get answered, or if they say, I would love to have that person present for us, you can call them and ask. These are busy people, so they may say no, but you can always ask, always, always ask. Are there any questions from anyone who's here as attendees? Put them in the chat or raise your hand, virtual hand.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I think I know the answer for myself, but when you're putting together a group of panelists and you're looking for diverse backgrounds, are you cognizant that diverse backgrounds might cause conflict? And how do you deal with that?
Who would like to answer that? Solarsar?
Sure, I'll take a shot at that. And here's how I approach that, Kyle. It's not, for instance, I wouldn't look to have Abhijit here arguing with me because we're on so different, but I would like Abhijit to bring his perspective that he brings to it. So that's where you want the diverse backgrounds. We have 4 people here with have diverse backgrounds, some similar experiences, some very different experiences. And so I would not look for people that I know are automatically antagonistic or opposite because there's an intention to get there. And so that's what I look for by speaking to them, even as Abhijit mentioned earlier, by speaking with them, I get a sense of, are they going to be oppositional or are they going to be collaborative? And I want people who are going to be collaborative, not the same, but collaborative.
And as a moderator, I need to be listening. If I get a sense something is going in the wrong direction, I need to flip immediately. I have to be ready as a moderator. And one thing I've learned is like the listening has to be so precise. Every word they say, it's because you can come up with new questions from them, you can change the direction.
Thank you. Yes, any other questions? Solarsar, would you expand just a little bit, because I don't think that came up in the in the what to do before, about inviting people who have different points of view. Could you?
Sure. But Terry was raising her hand, though, I noticed when I scrolled the screen. I don't know if Terry
I can wait a minute. That's okay.
Okay. Well, for instance, as I said, in most cases, there's only a couple of times where I actually selected the panelists. Most often I'm brought into the panelists. And so what I want to hear from them is a sense of that they're working with the other If I'm selecting panelists, I just want to say that that's a whole different technique I won't go into. But if I'm selecting panelists, I already have a sense of people who have an expertise in a certain area. And when I speak to them, if I get a sense of, going back to even what Yolanda or Rebecca said, oh, I'm the expert on this. I don't need to hear what Abhijit has to say because I know how this has to happen. Then I'll just let that person know, well, I'm going to take that into consideration. I want to talk to some other people and see if I can get additional viewpoints. And then they're off the panel. I mean, I usually approach people if I'm doing a panel of, I'm interested in creating a panel. Here's what I'm interested in. What do you think about that? And then have that dialogue with them. And the minute I get the person who's set in their ways, they're off the panel, because then it's going to be what Yolanda and Rebecca said. It's going to be that person dominating and attempting to dominate.
So you do interviews for your
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Each and every time. Yes.
Terry,
Even
go
ones I don't select, I do interviews.
Oh, yes. Well, yes, I understood that. Thanks. Terry.
I was just going to ask if, when you're doing a panel, if you have a question that you want to share about, is it appropriate to bring in another question to answer that hasn't maybe been asked by the moderator?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry, my head did.
Can you offer your own question to answer that the moderator hasn't asked yet?
Who'd like to?
Oh, I'm sorry. I may have misunderstood. Do you mean as a panelist or do you mean as the moderator?
Yes, as a panelist, maybe answer a question that you want to answer rather than just what the moderator has asked.
Yolanda, would you like to address that? I see you shaking your head.
Even though you are, and I apologize, my son is 15. He is autistic. He just busted in. He does not care that I'm on this.
Come in here.
I told you to take your medicine and go to bed.
My medicine isn't here.
Okay, so he doesn't care. But when you are a panelist, you have to remember that there is a structure that the moderator wants to follow.
Good morning.
You need to, good morning, good night. So you need to stick to that structure. There's a reason, there's a time limit, there's a thought in their head, there's a vision that they have. Please do not go off on a tangent. It may be easy, like we're talking about panels today, but somebody may want to talk about, hey, listen, when I was in a contest, I'm sure all of these individuals have spoken before. I know they all have stories. I have stories. Lindy has stories, but guess what? We stayed to topic. And that is the respectful thing to do to the moderator that invited you, to the audience that came to hear about your topic, and to you yourself. Just stick to the topics. And if there's additional things that you want to say, drop it in the chat. Put it in the chat if there's something else that they want to say.
Thank you, Yolanda. Solar Sar, in 30 seconds, I'm out of time.
Okay, well, Terry, I'm brutal. It goes back to what Abhijit said earlier. So let's say Abhijit starts asking a question as a panelist and I'm the moderator. Abhijit, that's a wonderful question. But I want to check with Rebecca on, and I just pull it away from him. And if there's time to come back to it, we'll come to it later. But I'm kind of brutal in that regard.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We are out of time. Judy Sadler, I know you have can you put it in the chat and can you put your question in the chat? That'd be great. Just going to say a couple words to wrap up. I wish each and every one of you could have spent the time that I got to spend with each of these wonderful people on the phone, listening to them talk about this, because each of them had stories. They've had time to share some, but not all with you today. I appreciate each of you has a style and an expertise and a panache. Each of you are performers in your own right, and it shows. It's you're charismatic and entertaining as well as educational, and I thank you for that. So they've shared why to do a panel. They've shared some of the good practices. They've shared some, but not all of the things that can make things go south. I didn't have time to get to just the bad things, the things that might be make it kind of a not so great panel. But please feel free to ask some questions beyond tonight. But one thing I do recommend is something that Yolanda said. Yolanda, I'm going to take the words out of your mouth. She says everyone ought to be on a panel not just once in their lifetime, but once or twice a month, I think she said. It was really often. And she spoke well to giving your gift, speaking about what you can speak about, sharing and being of service, basically. So I give that as a challenge to each of you to try moderating a panel. If you don't like moderating, try to get yourself on a panel. But it's an art form, and give yourselves permission to play. To each of you, thank you. And with this, I'm going to hand it back to our Toastmaster, Shirley.
I would just say, oh my goodness, that was such an enlightening discussion on panels. My goodness, I'm not sure if I can handle something like this, Lindy. But let me now introduce our next person that's got an eye for detail and also a knack for assessment to give us words about how this meeting went from our general evaluator, Ayushi Rai.
Thank you, Shirley. Evaluations is where we receive feedback, and today our first evaluator who will evaluate the moderation and the discussion we had today will be Judy Sadler. Here you go.
Okay, I was going to sign off table topics and prepare my evaluation. So let's see what I can pull together from just looking at notes. Okay. First of all, Lindy, you did a marvelous, marvelous job. As a model for being a good moderator, you had it all. I liked how at the beginning you gave your personal story. I've never done this before, but it wasn't said like, oh, I haven't done this before. It was done with confidence. Your confidence showed from the first words out of your mouth. When you began your first question, what have you done that is out of your comfort zone? My first thought was, where is she going? This is the good, the bad, and the ugly of moderating a panel. So I spent a minute trying to work that into your plan of how you were going to do that. I ended up liking that very much. I think you did a great job. It helped me learn to know the panelists a little better and maybe even appreciate their points of view as they shared something about themselves. You, Lindy, were so comfortable throughout this. This showed through your smiles. It showed through your joking with the panelists, with the audience. The personal touch that you gave to each panelist as they talked about what challenges they were facing that were out of their comfort zone. So you made that connection. I appreciated when you asked, I believe it was Yolanda, for an explanation of Denny. I didn't know what it was. I appreciated that interruption, although I wouldn't call it an interruption. I spent as much time taking notes on how to be a good moderator from our panelists because you were doing such a good job. You were checking off all the boxes that you need to do as moderator. So I was taking copious notes. You weren't afraid of pauses. A couple of times, one of the panelists would finish talking. There would be a moment of silence. Not many. It usually flowed just one after the other. But you weren't afraid of those pauses. You embraced them. I appreciated the questions that you asked of how to choose a panelist, how to prepare. and the conversation that you had with each panelist prior to this panel. You were flexible. You talked about that needing that ability, as did the panelists. When towards the end, you said, okay, I was going to go do the ugly, or I was going to do good, bad, ugly, but I'm going to turn it upside down. Let's go straight to the ugly. And I thought to myself, good, I wanted to hear some of that. And you were willing to be flexible with that. One of our panelists, I think it was Abhijit and Solzar, both talked about the importance of having a backup moderator. And I did notice that you did send out a note and asking Kyle to do that if for some reason you couldn't show up. I would not have thought of that. You had that handled. Your comments to the panelists, I appreciated. And I know I'm going over time, but Lindy deserves more than 2 minutes. This was not just a 5 to 7 minute speech, so I'm just going to keep talking. One suggestion I would have on the comments for several panelists, you said excellent. That's judging what they say. Fine, I appreciated, or that's an interesting point, or I really connected with that point. But I would suggest leaving out words like, oh, that was excellent. You're summarizing all of the panelists at the end, what they had to say, summarizing the whole meeting, having them put their emails into the chat was excellent. I want to make sure I didn't leave out anything that I thought was super important. And so many of the people, said the job of the moderator is not to be on stage, but it is to elevate each speaker. And you did that with aplomb. It was excellent from one of them to the other. Connection before content. And that's what you did right from the beginning. And the last thing, you put a challenge out to all of us to either be a moderator or get on a panel. And I appreciated that advice. And I know I'm going to use all of my notes in a couple of months when I am doing just that. But you have set the bar very high, and I really commend what you have done on this panel. Thank you, Lindy.
Thank you, Judy, for your wonderful evaluation. Now moving on to general evaluation. Presiding officer, you, Yvonne, greeted very warmly and welcomed each and every one of us. Thank you for that. The guest introduction was properly and professionally done. Moving on to Toastmaster of the evening, Shirley, you were brief and to the point. The introduction of the role players and the moderator, both were very professional and well done. Our moderator, Lindy, you were very professional and welcoming throughout. I really like the way you introduced the panelist. You gave an introduction and then you asked a little bit of the input from the panelist as well. So the introduction was made like a conversational style. So I really like that. In the introduction, you also shared your personal anecdote with each and every of the panelists. So it really intrigued us from the very start about the stories you had with the panelists and how the discussion will flow further. So I really like the way that you made it interactive from the very start itself. Overall, there were very thought-provoking questions, and I really like the way that you concluded it by capturing the essence of the discussion. And we went a little overboard on time, but I really like that you asked the panelists to drop their information, drop their emails in the chat box so that we can connect with them later. So thank you for that. Panelists, Rebecca, Yolanda, Abhijit, Salazar. Thank you very much, first of all, for sharing so much wisdom and knowledge with us. I really liked your experiences that you shared, and thank you for sharing your knowledge about the background planning that is done while while being a panelist, the research that goes into it, the preparation that you need to do, and everything that goes in to run a smooth panel. Thank you very much for sharing that insight. I liked that you distinctly pointed out that there is a difference between a moderator and a panelist, and how you pick up the topic and having the appropriate questions on the number of panelists that you need in the panel and what all you need to make the discussion interactive and not boring. So that was really the point that stood out to me. And you also talked about the things that could go wrong, like last minute cancellations, or you could have a technical glitch in terms of online presentation, in-person room setup that needs to be taken care of, the mic, the camera, and everything that goes into a smooth planning. So you even pointed out the minute details, and I really like that. And it was really helpful to conduct a discussion in a Toastmasters, as a Toastmasters project, and even outside. So that was even going a step further. Evaluator, Judy, thank you very much for your positive and encouraging remarks. And you also captured the essence of the discussion and the panelists as well. So overall, the meeting was very formal and knowledgeable, and I really want to thank you all for being on time and making the meeting a huge success. Thank you. With that, we now move on to the role players report. First, I would like the timer, Karen, to please present the timer's report.
Thank you, Ayushi. The panel elapsed time was 58 minutes and 30 seconds. The evaluator one, Judy Sadler, was 6 minutes and 30 seconds. And Ayushi, you were 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
Thank you for the timer's report, Madam Timer. Next, we have the R counters report, and I would like to call Douglas to please present his report.
Hold on. There you go.
Thank you. It would take me at least 10 minutes to give a detailed report. So what I'd like to do is just mention just go in the order of the, you know what, it was good that I had this job because it really made me listen. Yolanda, you take the most crutch words and things like that. But then you are a poet, right? So I believe that it's just what you're supposed to be doing. Rebecca, you're next in line. Salazar is next. Abhijit, I'm sure I said that wrong. I apologize. But there came a time just about 10 minutes before the panel discussion ended where you were overtaking Salazar, but then he came in and took over. So thank you for, well, let's thank Salazar for saving the day. And Lindy is next, but Lindy, there's not really a whole lot there. You're about half of everybody else's. And that's my report. Thanks.
Thank you for the report, Douglas. And finally, we have the grammarian to make sure how we did on the grammar, and that is Teresa.
Okay, thank you. I want to start with an apology because Lindy did ask me to be the grammarian a couple of weeks ahead of time. So I had agreed to this. So that was my bad. I also want to share that some of the things that were said tonight were said so well. I appreciated listening to all of the answers. Salazar, I loved there's butterflies all over the place. That was, just really nice sharing that you could let us know that, even you at this place in your career of speaking do have those butterflies show up. When Lindy asked, what are you doing to stretch your skills? I loved Abhijit's answer that this has been the most stretchiest thing I've ever done. Several things were in there. One of the things Yolanda talked about the diversity, and as a mother of a child with a disability, I really appreciate that on multiple levels, the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'd love to learn a little bit more about where you're working with that. Rebecca, I loved I'm the queen for the day, that we should be the king or queen for the day. That was a really nice way to say that. And Lindy, I loved how you finished it up when you said, I wish that all of you could have had the conversations that you had had. It's an art platform, you said, give yourself permission to play. And that was a really, really lovely way to sum that up. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here tonight.
Thank you, Terry, for your wonderful Grammarians report. With that, we conclude the evaluation, and I now hand back the stage to the Toastmaster of the evening, Shirley.
Well, thank you for that, Madam General Evaluator. Certainly all those constructive insights help us grow to be better and better speakers. Now I certainly understand as well why is it that Lindy delayed this project, this particular project in her pathway. Certainly panel discussion is not for the weak of heart. I find it's big, hairy, and audacious. I'm not sure whether at this point, personally, I could embrace doing panel discussions, but I certainly learned a lot from it and gives me lots of things to what I certainly learn is it's important to have advanced planning for one thing, and the importance of having a very skilled moderator, well prepared, researching all the panelists, and more importantly, the commitment for respectful dialogue among the panelists. So all in all, what a wonderful meeting. I just like to thank everyone in attendance, but like all things, good or bad, we unfortunately, sad to say, we are close to the end of this meeting. So I would have to hand the baton over to our presiding officer,